It's day 6 of 100 days of code here on Lilly Code. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to be continuing on with my project and just going at my own pace as I build it, and I'll be solving bugs and chatting about what I'm doing along the way. But do stay tuned for my weekly video coming out where I will be going through HTTP GET requests. So that's coming up, and in that video I'll actually be doing a more tutorial focused session where I'll be explaining a concept in depth. I'll be focusing purely on that one concept and I'll give you code examples, so that's a little bit more direct learning. This is more just for my own learning, but I'm sure you'll learn something if you watch along and you're interested. So thank you for joining me. Let's get going on day 6. So as I tend to start out every day, I watch a little bit of the video and I start coding. I'm following Maximilian's video. So I'm just creating a new filter function where we can pick from a drop down a filter, and that's the component we're going to be making now. So let's get going. This statement is not necessary anymore in the later versions of React, but you'll see it in a lot of older versions. So for that reason Max includes them, but you don't have to. I didn't include it in my last one. I'm just including it here to explain that concept, this line here, import React from React. React now does that part for you, but you'll see it all over the place, so in other tutorials that are just slightly older but still relevant. We're just doing our normal standard function definition here that we've been using this entire time, so that is useful. Okay. Sorry, there's a bit of construction going on. I really hope it's not too loud, but I was gonna hold off, but I cannot hold off all day to do my 100 days of code. I have lots of things to do today. It's Saturday. Happy Saturday, everybody. So yes, for that purpose I just have to get into it, so I'm really sorry if that's disturbing. He doesn't normally go for that long. And then we're just filling out our HTML here. So we have a top level div and we're going to give it a class name so we can attach CSS to this. call this sheesh. Filter, and then we have a second level div, again class name, and this one is going to be, and Max has provided the CSS for these. This is a paid for course, by the way, guys. You do need to have a subscription to O'Reilly, but Max does so many great free courses. This guy has taught me how to code. I am so grateful to him. I have learned all of my fundamentals from this man, which is why when it came back to doing another course, it was just a no-brainer to go with Max. So you'll really get a great base. So I'll add some free courses that he does, and even just if you're not at a level of starting tutorials, just watching this, you know, you'll pick up terms, you'll pick up phrases, and every little bit of learning is still learning. So I always used to use this duplicate function when I just grabbing a pen. I used to always use this duplicate function when I copied a line of code in WebStorm. I used to use WebStorm, and I've come back to Visual Studio Code. WebStorm is another IDE, so another code editor where you can just go in and write code like this, and you have syntax highlighting, which is just the way this syntax here is highlighting, and you get suggestions, and you can have your templates filled out for you with various extensions, and it's just a smart way to code because it will tell you things about your code that will help you find bugs and things like that. So that's all an IDE is, this black thing, the Visual Studio Code that I'm working in. And WebStorm is a paid for product, very good, but Visual Studio Code is excellent as well. So I mean, they're both brilliant. So I used to have a shortcut that I loved on Visual Studio Code, and I just need to implement it here. So let's do that. So duplicate line of code. I have it installed on my work computer because it's so helpful. So there we go. Duplicate selection or line. I'll just read this actually quickly, but I'm sure this is the one. Yeah. So CTRL and D. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think this should do it now. So if I go back here and I just do CTRL and D, and if you want, you could check out my video on Visual Studio Code extensions, where I go through how to install them and my recommended ones. So check that out if you're interested. And let's get going on this. So now if I just do CTRL and D, yay, it's so helpful. So there you go. Quick way to duplicate your lines of code. And you know, you're going to just do something like this. So 19. Should we be going forward in years? Okay, that's what Max has, so I'm happy sticking with Max because he's the master. So whatever you say, Max, like that, and then that's all. So this is what we're going to return. This is our return statement for this particular component. We've declared a top level div. In React, everything must be wrapped in one top level div. I've mentioned this before, but it's an important point, so I don't see why not to reiterate it. Then we have our class name with our various classes, which will match to the CSS classes. We access them with a dot and the name. Then we can style this various area. We just have a label, which is just the label for the area, so the label is a filter. And then we have our select, so this would be our drop down with our various years, and the values just are the names given to this particular drop down, and then this is the label or the text that's going to display. So that's what's going on there. This is the text and this is the identifier basically. So let's keep going. Okay, so we are going to, I'll put this here, but we're going to move this within the card. Expenses, props. Okay, so I should have my card here. Missed that. So I should have a card there, and then a class name of expenses. And these are self-closing tags. And that should be all wrapping these expense items. So here instead we're going to have a card. So this one isn't self-closing because it's wrapping the whole thing, and I still need my div. And now, oh yeah, because this is still self-closing, and it shouldn't be because it's wrapping the entire area. And then I'm going to need to import my card. Do I not have a card created? Oh no, it's gone wrong. I think I've jumped ahead of myself here. Alright, let's forget about the card. I'll go back and look at the card, find out where the card was implemented, and do that. But for now, I'm going to just add in my expenses filter because that's what we've just created. So let's just keep going with that. Expense. I don't think I exported it. I did not. So yes, so then down here, in order to use it in other places, we need to export it. So you export default and then the name of the component that you've created. So just like that. And now you should be able to grab it in the expenses once it is being exported. So there we go, pop straight in there. And then we'll just close it off. Self-closing tag. And here's our little filter, woohoo! Great. And then let's see if that's actually firing, which it should be, because in our expenses filter.js we said that when we select something, we've added this onChange method, which is going to run this function. And the function takes the event, so the onChange event, the thing we've changed, so the value, whichever one you've selected, it's going to send that back up in this event object. And then we should be console logging that out, and what we're console logging out here is the event.target.value, which means we should see the number, the actual value that we had changed it to. So let's check that out and see if our filter is doing what it should. It's so great when things work in coding, I swear. So this is my general honest day-to-day happiness, like it's great. So let's keep going. This is expenses filter. Okay, yeah, so I've named the function expenses filter, and then I've named the file expense filter. So let's just fix that. So yes, automatically. So once I change that file name there, Visual Studio Code has realized that I've imported this in other places. So namely the expense.js. So it's asking me, do I want to automatically update this import in that file from expense to expenses, which I do, because otherwise I won't be able to access it, as I've renamed the file name in order to match the definition of the new component's name. And it's more relevant to name it expenses because it's not just for one expense. So let's just keep the naming convention smooth, and that's why we're going to rename it. And it's great that Visual Studio Code is going to look after renaming it in other components. Expenses, okay, and Oh, didn't rename this for me. So good I had an eye on it anyway. So if I just do expenses. So what's up? Cannot find expenses filter CSS in expenses. Expenses filter from expenses filter. Expenses filter. .css. Yes. And then it's just an empty file, but that's all good. So just in case, I'm going to give this a hard reload. And it still can't find it in components expenses. So I just deleted the import, because normally then it like requires you to import at line 11. Yeah, okay, so let's just write this manually. I don't need that comment, so I'm just going to get rid of that. I don't need the, oh yeah, import. I thought I was going to pull in the CSS here, which I don't need it, because the CSS is just related to the file, the same component, and then that CSS will carry through because it's related to that file. So, and this should just be like this, and then we add the path. So we give the name and then the path. And the path is expenses filter. Expenses filter JS cannot resolve expenses filter. Aha, because I named it filters. Okay, so now we know what's going on. And now we just need to make sure that this is reflective. Cannot find expenses filter .css. Why not? Yay! Okay, yeah, so it was just a misnaming of the file. You have to be careful about naming your files the correct name so that things line up. So just keep that in mind. It can be such simple problems when you're coding. And when you're new, you just don't know this, and it takes ages, but you will get there. These things do become more and more apparent. And even now sometimes I still get stuck on silly problems, but you're so happy when you solve it and you just can't believe it was something so silly, which is generally the majority of the time. I mean, in the beginning, fair enough, things seem so out there, so outlandish, and you know, some errors you haven't got a clue, and even when you solve it you're like, what was going on? But it gets better, so just keep on practicing, guys. Join in the 100 Days of Coding Challenge. You'll be flying. Okay, so in our expenses.js, we are going to define a new function here. And so modern seeing these function definitions with no brackets. It's awesome. yeah, ES6 is great. Really starting to get used to it now, whereas in the beginning I was like, I don't know how to read that function. So again, with time and practice, you get better and better. It's just the ways of the world, so get practicing. Okay, so I just got this error here saying that props is not defined on line 7. And that's just because we didn't pass it in here, so just gotta pass it in and that'll go away. Great. So what we've done here is we've passed this event through to the expenses.js by passing through this function call here and sending it the event.target.value. So in expenses.js here, the filter change handler is receiving the selected year. This is what's being passed in to the function. And then we are console logging out expense.js and the selected year, and we can see there that it has successfully passed this value, this information, right the way to the expenses.js file. So super stuff, and let's keep going. Okay, so we're just going to keep an eye on the state of this particular year. We want to keep that stored so that we can change it and update it, and that's what we use the Usestate for. So that's why we're implementing that here now. It takes the variable name of the thing that you want to store, and then you also give it the function call in order to update that value, which is the second part of this destructured array here. So that's what we're doing, and we're going to use state. This is a really important concept in React. So you'll see it a lot. Integer is assigned but never used, so filter here, yes, so I just have to actually implement this now. So down here we can see I have this error, filter year is assigned but never used, and that's just because we literally didn't use it. So down here now we can use it. Okay, so basically, if I just take this out again and show you what's going on. So here we've defined filtered here is not defined. Why? Okay. Let's just zoom out here for a moment. Oh no, not there. Down here so we can see what's going on. Expenses.js should be expenses.js line 15. JSX value should be either an expression or a quoted JSX text. So let's go have a look at expenses.js. We are here. JSX value, this is the JSX, should either be an expression or a quoted JSX text. Now I'm not fully certain what that means, and I have a feeling, because I just didn't see this, like I could go and Google it and start worrying about it and figure it out, but I think filtered here should be here, because we want to set the filtered here right, Max? Yeah, so basically this error just popped up out of nowhere, and sometimes you can go chasing your tail around errors when, if I just continue for a moment with the project, it may resolve itself, and I could go and look it up and I could fix it, but I think just continuing is the better solution right now. Sometimes errors just fix themselves, so yes, that's what I'm gonna do. Filter. It's a bit warm, guys, so just gonna open this window for a moment. During figuring that out, I also realised that I do have the card component. So I had done that, I thought I had, but I've actually started this tutorial twice. The first time I did it, I started it during work because we were given the time to upskill in order to get to grips with the new language that we were learning. So I started it in work. I got, let's say, 25% through or something. But then I thought, do you know what, I'm actually going to start this again and record it and go through all of it. So yeah, and so therefore I wasn't sure whether I had actually created this card component or not, and just do it on my own time because, you know, I like to learn. So I do have this card component, so therefore I can use the card as it was intended by Max. So in the expenses.js, he has this entire thing wrapped in the card, and the card actually replaces this div. That's how he's done it. So if I do that and then import card, from, and it's coming from the UI folder, so we need to go up a level into UI, and then we can get our card. And it cannot find module this. What's that about? So card is not defined. So let's just make sure that we exported our card. We did export it. Card is not defined. I don't need anything else here. Just going to compare it to another file to just see if I can see anything glaringly obvious. So if I split this to my left, all you do is just right click and you get these options, and then I can check out my card component and compare it to another one. So I have my function definition, the name, I'm passing in some props, I'm opening my brackets, they're closing down there. I've exported my card. So I don't know why this isn't working. I do need the card CSS actually, so I will add that. Import why isn't that? Oh, I don't complete it. Okay, and that somehow fixed the issue. Things are funny. So yeah, that fixed the issue. Let's just reload and make sure that I don't get those issues again. Okay, so all good. Okay, that's good. So let's continue. Expense data is assigned. Okay, so I'm going to just keep on going in the interest of progress. Da-na-na. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Apologies. Sometimes you just need to stretch, guys. Sorry, like sitting at a desk all day. Get your stretching in. Another thing I like to do is work, generally not during this 100 Days of Coding challenge, purely for the reason that sorry, I had an alarm go off there, so yes, purely for the reason in this challenge that I just am getting through my hour, and because I'm talking and communicating with you guys, it's actually like they're my little break, so it's not like I'm trying to focus for a whole hour in a way. But normally I would do Pomodoro time sprints of study, so 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break. And what I try and remember to do during my 5-minute break is open that window there, take a look at something in a close proximity, so 2 meters away for 20 seconds. I've heard this is really good for your eyes, and your eyes do get tired doing this, as does your back, which is why I need to do a little movement. So yeah, just to explain why I'm moving about. And then so I'll look at something 2 meters away, and then I'll look at something 20 meters away for 20 seconds, and then I'll look at something 200 meters away for 20 seconds, just to give your eyes a break. And it's actually so funny, when you've been sitting looking at a computer for even 25 minutes, you won't remember to do this at every Pomodoro, even if it's once a day. When you start looking at that thing far away, like your eyes are like blurring, I'd be like, oh my god, my eyesight, and then they'll focus again. So keep that in mind. If you're at a desk all day, get up. You know, there's no shame in going and making yourself a cup of tea. Your legs need to move, your body needs to move, so get that movement in, get those eye exercises in, so your eyes can refocus. I just read that somewhere ages ago and have built it into my day. Also, there's these things called brain squats, where you cross over your arm like this and your other arm like this, and they did studies in schools, it was on the news, and they did studies that this synchronizes the two sides of your brain and contributes to much greater focus and learning. So all these little tricks can be done in the middle of your Pomodoro timing. When you've got your 5-minute break, you can go and make your, and it doesn't have to be 5 minutes. If you make yourself a cup of tea and you're back in 6 minutes and you do some eye exercises, well, that was some time really well spent for you to come in and be so much more focused when you sit back down. So take those little breaks, take a little stretch. So don't mind me if I'm stretching about and like, you know, moving or something, because it's necessary, I think. So get the movement in, guys. So Max has just changed this from a stateful component, i.e. where it uses a state or a smart component as he's explaining it, to a dumb component where you do not need to use a state in order to track it, which is just a presentational component. And neither is good or better than the other. Neither is better. It doesn't matter if it's a stateful or stateless, smart or dumb. They both have their purpose within a React project, and in fact you'll have more dumb or stateless components than you will stateful components. So he explains it in such good terms. He goes into more depth in everything. So check out Max. Yeah, but I hope that you're learning something along the way with my explanations also. So yeah, so I'm just going to change this to a DOM component now. He said we can get rid of all of this because we're going to pass it in a different way, and this because we are removing the state. And how we are now going to pass this in is props.title. And because this isn't managing the state of anything, it's now a DOM component. And our onClick handler, yes, should also go, because we don't need that. Expense item. Date, yes, then we have our description, props title, then we have our price, props amount. Then he just got rid of the button actually, so we have our card. There we go. Okay. And I also just need to pull in the CSS for this area and the filter, so I'll find that after the video, because there's no point in just going and doing that now. Let's continue with the coding. You can see what's going on. And literally, I'm not going to be writing any CSS. Max has provided the CSS, so I'll just plug and play and it'll look nice. Great. So now we're going to the next part of the project, which is lists and conditional statements. So that's what we're getting into next. Yeah, so now what we're going to look at is lists and dynamically rendering lists. So as you can see here in this expense.js file, we have declared the expense item 3 times. And normally when you're getting in some data, you don't know exactly how many items are going to be in that array because it's dynamic. So if someone adds a new one in, well, where's it going to go? There isn't space in the code for that to happen. So if we do something different where we have one expense item and we have a loop, and we just plug in the information that we need each time, then it can be reusable and it'll just dynamically add more and more. As the object gets larger or smaller, it will reflect that in the code. So we seen in one of my earlier videos that I had an issue with this, because when I first defined my expense item, I declared 4 of them rather than 3 of them, and I was getting an error and I couldn't figure out why I had the error, and then I figured it out. It was because I had left space for 4 objects to show on the page, 4 expense item objects, when in fact my array only had 3 items to display. So that's where that issue had come from. So yes, using a dynamically shown list rather than these static lists is a much better approach, and it's more reusable. Your code is more reusable. So that's what we're going to do now. So that's great to know, actually. This piece of information I've been waiting on. These are the little tidbits of magic that I come to Max's React courses, or any of his courses, for. As I said, he taught me programming in general. I did all my Angular learning with him, and then you go on and build your own projects and you learn more. But so basically, in this return statement, when you have these curly brackets, I'm just going to go back and listen to that again so I don't say the wrong thing. So basically though, I'll say what I think it's going to say, so then I can see if I was correct, and it's best to just take a guess. So when you have these curly brackets within your return statement, you can add in a dynamic piece of code there. So I can add in more complex code into these curly brackets, and it will process that for me then. So that's what these are for. That's why you see these littered throughout the return statement. And actually something I learned is, if you want to console log out something within this return statement, you have to have it encased within these curly brackets, which isn't immediately apparent when you first come to React and you're trying to debug your code and you don't know why your object or your particular item isn't displaying on your page, and you can't get your console logs to work and you're just not sure what's going on. It needs to be included in these curly brackets. So when you're trying to run a piece of code, it must be included in these curly brackets. So that's key. Yeah, great piece of information. Let's keep going. Yeah, so it's because we want to execute a dynamic expression in our JSX code. So let's keep going. Yep, I knew he was going to say that. Yeah. Yeah, so all the this is doing here now is this is allowing us to process some more complex code, and what we're doing is we're passing in our expense and we're using this map function, and map takes an array of an array of items, and it takes each item in that array and does something with it, so it transforms it. So if you had a map function that took an item of an array and added 1 to it, for your outputted array, each element in that array, if it was a numerical array, would have the number 1 added to it. So map lets you take one array and output another one with the original value. So what we're doing here is we're taking our original array of expenses and we want to map them to expense items. So we're transforming it into this other thing with the original array, and then that's our array that's outputted. So that's what's going on there. And then within here we can pass in our various properties that we'd like to see on this particular item. So we want the title to be the expense.title, and this will dynamically get this for each of the titles. And then we want all the other information as well, I presume, so that's coming. Yeah. Let's get rid of this stuff now so you can see a little bit better. Close all. And yeah, date, wasn't it? Okay, and he has removed this array and just put it out here and call this dummy expenses. Because we're going to do this a little bit more smart. Expenses. So now we can update. This is going to allow us to actually add items to that list. So now we can set our expenses and we pass in our new expense, and we've initialized with the dummy data. So we'll still have our dummy data there because we've passed that in as an initial state, but now we should be able to add a new item and it should be added to the list. So let's have a look. We will go with milk again. I'm so unimaginative. last time I think I made the price of milk like 30 quid, so I was like, okay, I come up with milk, but let's hope milk never reaches the price of 30 quid. So, or quid is just a slang terminology for money in Ireland, and we have the euros here, so sorry for using the old Irish slang. Well, I'm not sorry, I'll just explain it. I quite like the Irish slang. So, submit. So we still have an issue here, so let's have a look. Props to item.map is not a function. So, okay. Okay, so I think it's because I've done this incorrectly. Rather than passing through just the expense like this, we need to pass through the expense and then also get the existing expenses and do the spread operator on them in order to also add them. So now, let's see, and I am getting ahead of myself because Max hasn't actually tried to add something yet. And maybe I'm just missing something fundamental. Yeah. Just undefined to local string at expense state JS4. Okay, so now it's given that about what date, about what date. Okay, so he just said if you update the state like this, oh, my head is gone. He just said if you update the state like this, that it's not the correct way to do it. So therefore, let's rewind and see what Max is going to say is the correct way. You should do it on the previous state. So therefore, we pass a function as an argument, and the function automatically receives the previous state. Yeah. And then our new array, yeah, with our expense and our previous expenses. Okay, so let's see. If I add bread, let's stick in €1. €1 for a piece of bread. So we'll go to 26 and submit. And I'm still having issues with my date. So let's go have a look at our expense item. Expense date, sorry. Yes, expenses. Expense date. Everything looks okay. Where to more? Okay. So Max just said, now this is working. We have a fully dynamic list. You may do, but I don't. So, but we'll get there, we'll get there. So I'm going to continue this later on just because the hour is done and I have to get off and do a few bits today, so I'm going to go and continue my day. I will be back later on. This weekend I have the video coming out on explaining HTTP and GET requests, so do stay tuned for that, and that will be much more informative and less informal than this particular video series. So do stay tuned for that, and have an absolutely wonderful weekend and just enjoy yourself. So yeah, have a nice weekend guys. Peace, enjoy, adios.